Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing? I am back. I had a neck injury that I was trying to work through, and still a little bit messed up. But we're going to talk today about "Kiss from a Rose." Now, this came out related to a Batman film back when I was a teenager, I believe, and a really beautiful song, a really wonderful voice, and I thought it would be a good idea to talk about it. So let's do it. All right, so right out of the gate here, we're going to listen to his speaking voice because I do find it to be interesting a lot of times to translate the person's speaking voice to then their singing voice. And sometimes their bridge and how high it is, how big they are, all that kind of stuff is very interesting. So here's just a clip from an interview. I'm going to be jumping around a little bit.
It was of me shouting. In actual fact, I don't even think I was shouting, but I raised my voice at a reporter.
Now, voice like that is the kind of voice that most of us all secretly would like to have next to us reading us a story when we're trying to sleep. So a little bit higher than my voice and very lightly spoken, very just wonderful. But I think he's about 6'4", 6'5", so this is a big dude. But yeah, his voice is a little bit higher than somebody like mine. I tend to be in the baritone range and stuff. But either way, like I said, try to take that. Let's back up and listen to it one more time and listen to how that translates into the singing voice.
The nature of the business. And one of the clips they showed was...
One of the clips they showed. So, yes, hey, one of the clips they showed is a little bit of a higher voice than mine. So now, when we come over to this Kiss from a Rose, we're going to be watching a live thing that he did 7 years ago, it looks like, or at least that's when they promoted it. Yeah, that was on SiriusXM. And, when they're on SiriusXM, you can't tell sometimes if it was 6 o'clock in the morning, if it was 6 p.m. at night. These things do affect people's voices and all that kind of stuff, how much somebody got to warm up, how many songs they were performing. I would imagine they probably just hooked all this stuff up and did this song. But I could be wrong. Either way, interesting to note. We're going to listen to this and start breaking some of this stuff down. And then I'll talk a little bit about how maybe you can go about trying to find some of these sounds in yourself.
There used to be a great tower alone on the sea. You became the light on the dark side of me.
Now, what's interesting is I hear the same quality, of course, that came through 20 years ago or whatever when this came out. And it sounds almost like somebody that has a little bit of vocal damage, which is weird to say. But I'm hearing a broken chord closure that doesn't sound like it completely wants to connect. Now, what that does, though, is give us this beautiful texture, and you're actually hearing 2 to 3 things at the same time. Now, there's plenty of ways to talk about that, but if I just go, like this, you're hearing pretty much one note. If I become nasal at the same time, there you're actually hearing a little bit of a difference in the texture because you're hearing kind of 2 things at the same time, whether you recognize it or not. If I split my chords apart and you hear that wind-like quality, that wind instrument-like quality, you're hearing at the same time as the note. When you're hearing his voice, you're hearing that texture come through, but there's almost a little bit of a struggle in there that's kind of giving it this extra life that sounds really lovely. And again, very wind instrument-like. So kind of listen to that a little bit more as we continue here. The funny thing is that when he hits the falsetto notes or the higher falsetto notes, it sounds almost like he's struggling a little bit. Now, I brought up to begin with the whole could be in the morning, could be no warm-up, could be just got it done interviewing, who the hell knows. But, yeah, you hear a little bit of a struggle in there, which is kind of, I don't know, it's like I said, as a vocal coach or a singer, etc., it's an interesting thing to me to be like, is there a little bit of a bad thing going in there that ends up being good? I don't know. We do notice also that he's playing upside down. That's kind of cool, right?
Love remains a drug that's the height of the pill.
Pill. So you almost hear this engagement of trying to connect. Pill. But when it snows. So one of the cool things I wanted to say right out of the gate with this, and like I said, I'm going to be all over the place, but if you want to try to develop some of this stuff, or you're trying to develop your singing voice, first of all, I just released a course called Rock Solid Foundation. You can find it on Teachable. I'll put it in the link to the description of this video, but if you're looking to take your voice to another level or start to put together how the hell any of this works, that's a great place to start. But one of the best things you could do, I think, too, is when you're trying to end up liking your voice, you're trying to figure out what's unique about your voice, not only running yourself through a PA system with speakers, but also having a DAW, having a recording program, and putting on compression and headphones and listening to yourself compressed. Because there's not going to be many times where you're not having your voice compressed. I sang with compression live. Most bands, if you're taking things to a higher level, are performing with compression on the microphone as well. It's going to lend itself to hearing more of the subtleties and the little idiosyncrasies of the way that you enunciate, the way you do this. And especially if you're trying to sing like this, where you're kind of broken apart, you really get to hear all those qualities. If I'm just sitting in my room, there used to be a gray, like it's kind of nice, but really hearing that, there used to be a gray, and all that coming through. Now, this is not compressed, but really does help you to appreciate your voice more and hear a lot of those magic kind of special things. Now, again, really great quality in his voice. He sounded like that 20 years ago. I hear it a little bit more in this performance now, but I don't know, man. Definitely cool. A lot of times when people are chasing after vocal distortion and grit, somebody like me, it's subconsciously because those things sound infinitely more interesting than just a clean note again. Because you're hearing more than one thing at a time. It makes it interesting. Actually, if you overuse false chord distortion, sometimes it kind of sounds shitty because you'll have a very specific note coming from the false chords, while the other note below might not be the same. And then sometimes that creates like a dissonance that doesn't sound very good. All right, here we go. We're going to listen to more of this.
You know, when it's snow, my eyes become a light. The light that you shine can be seen.
So right there, I can hear his speaking voice coming through, and I can hear that his voice is higher than mine. And I can hear that by how easily he's enunciating through those, light that you shine can be seen. Just right there, I could just kind of hear his bridge is not as close as mine is. Do you hear that in the entire quality? Let's back up. So great sounding higher note there, of course, and it sounds wonderful. But there's a consistent coming through. When he said from, there's this little bit of a break in there. Again, could be a vocal problem. Could be something he's always had. Obviously, he's learned how to sing through it and whatever. But when I watch live videos of this, I've seen him perform in this key. I've seen him perform in that key. I've seen him perform. It's always changing, so it makes me wonder about his vocal health. And some days maybe it's better. Some days maybe it's worse. Or maybe I'm just making all this up and it's completely ridiculous. Anyway, we'll start talking about how to hit some of these higher notes here too. But let's continue. Now, another great thing so many musicians do, so many singers, is when they have this tension and this cry that builds into more powerful notes, and then they keep releasing back into this breathy thing. You'll even find somebody like Maynard from Tool uses a lot of this breathy kind of singing, so then he takes it and starts making it intensified and enters into a distortional belt and then backs off into this. And it can make for really wonderful listening experience. I mean, even if we're talking about Nickelback, Chad Kroeger always is singing like that, where he's going, I'm driving black on black, and he's just a little bit like this, and then he goes, yeah, and he starts digging into it, and then he lands back in that, and again, it gives that crescendo, it gives so much more life to the heavier notes, because you're like, oh, here we go, and then you back down, so. how many people they mic'd up and how many people they got to mix to. And it's a lot of people to cram into this room, man. It sounds great, though.
There's so much a man can tell you, so much he can say. You remain my power, my pleasure, my pain, baby. To me.
So with that word right there, baby, being able to do that, that's an F sharp 4. So that's, I've said plenty of times, about 85% of the men I've taught over the course of 14, maybe 15 years now, have a bridge right where mine is, which is an F sharp 4. So right there, we can hear that he wasn't really doing much mixing, or he didn't really work too much. We had a little bit of tension here to hold that together, but let's back up and watch him say baby, which is not very easy to sing the higher you go. Baby, 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 baby. When I do that, you're hearing me mix and pull the larynx down. Baby, baby. So let's listen to him do it. Baby, you can hear he can sit more in the face, and you hear more of his jaw. Baby, and you hear I'm not doing that at all. Baby. So interesting. Again, that goes to show that he's got a little bit more headroom before he gets to his bridge.
You're like a road addiction that I can't deny. Won't you tell me, is that healthy, baby? But did you know when it snowed, my eyes become alive and the light.
Now, how many of you totally fucked these lyrics up for years? I know I did. I had no idea what he was saying so many times, and I always thought it was Kiss from a Rose on a Grave, and I had no idea what it was about. But interesting stuff about this, too, is that he wrote this song before he could play any instruments. Somebody gave him this Tascam kind of old-school recorder, and he just started writing and trying to figure out how to operate this thing, and out of that came this song. But again, no instrumentations. That's why this song is compiled from so many of these, like, because he was kind of creating this landscape that he could start singing over top of. So very interesting. And again, interesting musically in terms of the note choices, because he didn't necessarily have, chords laid down or anything like that. And then we see now that when he did learn, like, guitar, he learned how to play a right-handed guitar upside down, which is kind of makes things a lot more difficult, you'd imagine.
That you shine can't be seen. Baby, rock away to a kiss from a rose on a grave. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah.
So again, right there we have feels, and that pulls apart. Feels, yeah. So without going too much farther, as I've talked long enough already, let's talk about a little bit of the ways that you might try to go about getting a sound like this. Now, again, you don't want to try to force something on your voice all the time that's not necessarily what your voice wants to do. It's going to keep leading to problems. Think about John Mayer, for example. You listen to John Mayer's speaking voice, then he sounds like a black dude from the 50s, and you're like, you don't sound anything like that when you speak. That's not really a good thing to do most of the time, and it tends to result in problems. You're forcing yourself usually into a much more limited range because you have to keep going. It's almost like an actor playing a character. It can only exist in this box, and then we don't have to keep taking it further. But anyway, it's not that hard to sing through a whisper or sing through an open coordination like this. So first of all, I like to explain it like this, where we think about having a stone here where the vocal cords are. If I go, that's complete connection right here in the front. Then if I start trying to hiss and whisper up over top that's what it feels like with my vocal cords. So you can start from connection, or you can start from lack of connection and then bring connection in. Of course, typically things you would think of are like, getting in a hot, warm bath. Or stretching in the morning, or whatever the hell. But trying to maintain that, just stretch out a note, try to take a breath from the right place. And there we can already start singing this line. If we did that, we'd, I've been kissed by a rose. I've been kissed by a rose. Just keeping that nice and airy. Now you're going to get lightheaded because if you're being too breathy, you're going to run out of breath and have to take breaths like this. But I talk about that in my course as well, taking something called a micro breath. Quick down here. What's interesting is that as I was hearing his breath there, some of the breaths he was taking, I was hearing upper chest breaths. An upper chest breath typically makes singing more difficult. We want to sing from the diaphragm, and do everything from the diaphragm, breathe. But if you take a breath from up here, and then down here, you hear the difference? This sounds more asthmatic. So I could hear him take a breath in there like this and have more of that kind of upper chest kind of quality. Just interesting to note. Anyway, taking a breath from down here, trying to get that breathy quality coming through. Da 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 da. Nicely done. So now let's get on to some of these heavier notes and some of this harder stuff. And of course, I teach these full lessons on Patreon. Like I'm going to teach more full lessons maybe about this song as well. But we come into these higher notes that are existing close to your bridge or right outside of your bridge. Keep in mind that as you're developing mixed voice, you're not going to mix right when you get to the note. You're going to mix before you get to the note. That's why I brought up the whole, like, he was sitting pretty much comfortably still in chest and had more headroom than I do if I was sitting right on my bridge or even 2-3 notes beyond, lower than my bridge. So if I have baby, baby, baby. Now I'm just in speaking voice and I can pretty much get through that. Baby, baby, baby. There you hear me start going, oh, and having to correct. Now, in this case, I'm not really crying or doing too much of that stuff. That gets more complicated. But I'm just lowering my larynx. So every time you feel the larynx start to go up, in one way you're mixing or learning to mix by then telling yourself that I have to drop the larynx instead of it going up. This is not easy to learn. It takes some time and some effort and some practice. Of course, one of the most simple ways to go about that, again, is to practice sirens. Stupid, just back and forth sirens and get to know what it feels like to connect between chest and head. Another simple example of that is to take all tension away, all thoughts about singing, and just go from ha, and just start there. Start as simple and as weak as possible, because a lot of times you thinking about it makes things worse. So if I take that, baby, I think that is this note. It's these notes. I compare you to a kiss from a rose on the gray. Ooh, ooh, ooh. If you're open, you should be able to go beyond that note. So let's just try to go, oh, oh, oh. And we're going to be pulling into the body and lifting up while this larynx is going down. So all the sound is going up through the top of the head, like it's going to blow your head off. Oh, oh. And then we're trying to put the words in there, baby, but don't just attack the note, baby, like this. It's not going to work. It's baby, baby, baby. We can try to put support up underneath of that, but everything's got a threshold, so pay attention to that threshold. Baby, baby, I compare you to a kiss from a rose. I gotta breathe. Baby, 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 baby. One of the dumber ways to try to do this before I tap out here, because it's already been 20 minutes, is again, we bring up Patrick Star from SpongeBob. The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma. As I continue to do this and get dopey, as everybody likes to refer to it, I'm being very conscious of this muscle pulling my hyoid bone down. Now, as I continue to rise, I'm just going to keep feeling that dopey feeling pulling down. Nothing else is happening, just and I'm going to lift up the face because I'm going up and through. Oh. And I'm going to keep that ball shape in the back of the mouth. So again, if I just go dopey, baby, baby, I compare you to a kiss. Hopefully some of that made sense. Again, I'm going to do probably more of a full lesson on this song on Patreon, but just wanted to get back to YouTube as I've been away for a while. I've been away for too long. And I also wanted to tell people about my upcoming, or my course that I just released, and my upcoming one will be about mixed voice. So thanks, everybody. I'll see you soon.